Hello. Today I thought I'd talk about fear. So I had a look in the Pali Canon, some of the earliest Buddhist teachings that were written down some time after the Buddha died. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about in relation to fear was a way that the Buddha's teaching is referred to as being like a lion's roar. A lion's roar. So I'm just going to read this little excerpt and then say something about it. The lion. Monks. It's usually the monks that's being referred to. In the evening, the lion, the king of beasts, comes out from his lair. He then stretches himself, surveys the four quarters all around, and roars his lion's roar 3 times, after which he sets out in search of game. When the lion, the king of beasts, roars its lion's roar, most of the animals that hear the sound are filled with fear, a sense of urgency and terror. Those who live in holes enter their holes. Those who live in water enter the water. Those who live in the woods enter the woods, and the birds fly up in the air. Even those royal bull elephants bound by strong thongs in the village, towns, and capital cities burst and break their bonds asunder. Frightened, they urinate and defecate and flee here and there. So powerful among the animals, monks, is the lion, the king of beasts, so majestic and mighty. So too, monks, when the Tathagata, that's another name for the Buddha, when the Tathagata arises in the world, an arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans, the enlightened one, the blessed one, he teaches the Dhamma thus. Such is form, such its origin, such its passing away. Such is feeling, such is perception, such are volitional formations, such is consciousness, such its origin, such its passing away. So this is a very deep teaching of the Skandhas. He goes on, then monks, when those devas who are long-lived, beautiful, abounding in happiness, dwelling for a long time in lofty places, hear the Tathagata's teaching of the Dhamma, most are filled with fear, a sense of urgency and terror, saying, it seems though we thought ourselves permanent, that we are impermanent. It seems though we thought ourselves stable, we are unstable. It seems though we thought ourselves eternal, that we are transient. It seems, sir, that we are impermanent, unstable, transient, included within identity. So powerful, monks, is the Tathagata over this world, together with its devas, so majestic and mighty. So the Buddha's lion's roar, his lion's roar, is just simply the truth. He doesn't have to wave swords or threaten anybody. All he has to do is to say the truth. So this tells us something about the profundity of the Dharma, that actually really knowing about impermanence, insubstantiality, and so on, it's like hearing a lion's roar when we really hear it, when we really take it in, when we really live it. So, it's like if we really lived with impermanence, with the knowledge, the deep knowledge, the direct knowledge of impermanence, we couldn't afford to waste any time in our lives. And in a way, every moment would be precious and wonderful because it would seem like the only moment. And in a way, it would be fantastic if we could live like that this is the only moment, we can't know about any other one, so that we could fully experience it. But how was the Buddha when he was fearful? And he was fearful at times. So, yes, this teaching is from the Bhayabherava Sutta. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. Anyway, a particular Brahmin is fearful, and he asks the Buddha, he asks the Buddha what he should do if he goes to the forest and he feels fear. So the Buddha tells him what he did. And the Buddha says, I considered thus. There are the specially auspicious nights of the 14th, the 15th, and the 8th of the fortnight. Now, what if on such nights as these I were to dwell in such awe-inspiring, horrifying abodes as orchard shrines, woodland shrines, and tree shrines? Perhaps I might encounter that fear and dread. And later on, such specially auspicious nights as the 14th, the 15th, and the 8th of the fortnight, I dwelt in such awe-inspiring, horrifying abodes as orchard shrines, woodland shrines, and tree shrines. And while I dwelt there, a wild animal would come up to me, or a peacock would knock off a branch, or the wind would rustle its leaves. I thought, what now, if this is fear and dread coming? I thought, why do I dwell always expecting fear and dread? What if I subdue that fear and dread while keeping the same posture that I'm in when it comes upon me? While I walked, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither stood, nor sat, nor lay down, till I had subdued that fear and dread. And while I stood, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither walked, nor sat down, nor lay down, till I had subdued that fear and dread. While I sat, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither walked, nor stood, nor lay down, till I had subdued that fear and dread. And while I lay down, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither walked, nor stood, nor sat down, till I had subdued that fear and dread. So there's a lot in here. I mean, it's quite heartening in a way to know that the Buddha did have to face fear. It wasn't like he never had any fear. We have an instinct to stay alive, and the Buddha did feel fear. So what did he do about it? Well, basically, he carried on doing what it was he was doing without running away. He faced the fear. If he was standing, he didn't move differently to standing still. He didn't run, he didn't walk, he didn't lie down, and he didn't sit. If he was standing, he stayed standing, and so on. And so what he's saying with all those repeats is, whatever I was doing, I continued doing it. Even though the fear and dread was on me, I didn't back off. I didn't turn away. And that's really good to know, because it's not like we have to pretend that we're not fearful, or that we have to try and get rid of the fear. So there's some fear, particularly for the protection of our lives, that is going to inevitably arise at times. But we can continue, we can stay with it, we can continue to turn towards, that's what it is really, turning towards those feelings. And eventually, he says, until he had subdued that fear and dread. And that wasn't by fighting it. It was simply by acknowledging it and staying with it. And specifically not distracting himself with it. And he could have. He could have said, look, I'm sure there's some bhikkhus would like a good teaching tonight. So rather than stay in the forest, I'll go and teach them. But no, he didn't do that. He just stayed with it. And quite honestly, some of the fears that he faced were a lot worse than we probably have to face most of the time. He says that wild animals came up to him, and he was probably meditating, and maybe the animals, there was nothing to fight. He wasn't running away. Maybe they just had a little sniff and off they walked again. So yes, I think it's a marvellous teaching, both in seeing his humanness, that actually he did have fear, and he stayed with it. And that's all we have to do. We have to turn towards those fears. So I'll leave it there. See you again.